On July 12, 2020, a brutal murder occurred at the Maryland Correctional Institution in Baltimore. Gelani High Totower, a 32-year-old inmate serving a 5-year sentence for drug possession, was found dead in his cell. His throat was slashed, and he had 14 stab wounds. The cell showed signs of a violent struggle, with blood-soaked floors and shredded bedding. The primary suspect was his cellmate, Terrell Lyman, a 29-year-old serving 8 years for armed robbery. We'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know how far our story has reached. Your support means the world to us. The Maryland Correctional Institution stood as a fortress of iron and stone, its walls a silent witness to the secrets within. That fateful night, the stillness was shattered by a discovery that sent shockwaves through the facility. Gelani High Totower, a man with a troubled past but a hope for redemption, lay lifeless on his bunk. The blood-soaked floor and the 14 stab wounds told a tale of violence and rage. His throat, slashed, was a grim reminder of the brutality that had taken place. As the guards moved through the cell block, their voices echoing in the corridors, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. Red flashing emergency lights pierced the darkness, casting an eerie glow over the scene. The prison, once a place of punishment and rehabilitation, now felt like a house of horrors. The discovery of Gelani's body was more than just a crime. It was a puzzle that needed solving, a mystery that demanded answers. The news spread like wildfire, both within the prison walls and beyond. Newspapers carried headlines that screamed of the unspeakable act. Inmates slain in high-security cell. The media, always eager for a story, painted a picture of chaos and fear. But behind the headlines and the flashing lights, there was a deeper story, one that would take investigators on a journey through the darkest corners of human nature. Detective Keshan Jakes, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail, was called to the scene. As he stepped into the cell, the weight of the crime pressed down on him. The blood, the wounds, the lifeless body. Each element of the scene was a clue, a piece of the puzzle waiting to be put together. The questions began to swirl in his mind. Who could have done this? What motive could drive someone to such violence? Gelani High Totower was not just a victim. He was a man with a past, a man who had made choices that led him to this place. And Terrell Lyman, his cellmate, was not just a suspect. He was a man with a reputation, a man who had built a life within the prison walls. On that fateful morning, the grim reality shattered the silence. Gelani's cell was a scene of horror. The blood-soaked floor and the 14 stab wounds on his body painted a picture of a violent and desperate act. His throat, slashed, was a chilling testament to the brutality of the crime. The forensic details were stark and unsettling. Blood splatter animations and diagrams of the wounds reveal the intensity of the attack. A broken toothbrush shank, likely the murder weapon, lay amidst the chaos. Shredded bedding and signs of a struggle indicated a desperate fight for life. The scene was meticulously examined. Every drop of blood, every torn piece of fabric, every mark on the wall was a clue. There were no signs of forced entry, which meant the killer was already inside. The realization sent a shiver down the spine of every investigator. The walls that were meant to keep the inmates contained had failed to keep the violence at bay. The very place where Gelani sought to atone for his past had become the site of his untimely end. As the investigators continued with investigations, they uncovered layers of the man behind the victim. Gelani was not just a statistic. He was a person with dreams, fears, and a desire to make amends. His family's words painted a picture of a man who was trying to turn his life around, who was looking forward to a future beyond the prison walls. The crime scene, with its stark and brutal details, stood in stark contrast to the life Gelani had hoped to rebuild. The mystery deepened as the investigation continued. Who could have done such a thing? What could have driven someone to commit such a violent act within the confines of a prison? The questions hung in the air unanswered as the investigators pieced together the final moments of Gelani High Totower's life. Detective Keshan Jakes had seen his fair share of crime scenes over the years, but the one in front of him was unlike any other. As he stepped into the cell, the weight of the crime pressed down on him. This wasn't just a murder. It was a message, and possibly a cover-up. Jakes, a seasoned investigator with the Baltimore PD's Major Crimes Unit, had a reputation for getting to the bottom of even the most complex cases. His keen eye for detail and unwavering determination made him the perfect person to lead this investigation. The initial evidence was both damning and puzzling. Surveillance footage confirmed that no one had entered the cell after the 10 p.m. lockdown. The broken toothbrush shank, with DNA evidence linking it to the suspect, lay near the body. Blood was found under the mattress and on the shoes of Terrell Lyman, Gelani's cellmate. Yet, Lyman's statement was riddled with inconsistencies. "I slept through it. I didn't hear nothing. I take sleep meds. Heavy ones," he claimed during his police interview. Jakes knew that every detail, every piece of evidence, and every inconsistency could be the key to solving the case. He spent hours poring over the surveillance footage, examining the crime scene photos, and listening to witness statements. The more he delved into the case, the more he realized that this was not a straightforward murder. There were layers of deception, hidden motives, and unspoken tensions that needed to be uncovered. Lyman's demeanor during the interrogation was particularly intriguing. He appeared calm, almost indifferent, which raised more questions than it answered. His claim of being a heavy sleeper due to prescription medication seemed plausible, but Jakes couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. The inconsistencies in Lyman's account, combined with the forensic evidence, painted a picture of a man who had something to hide. As Jakes continued his investigation, he began to piece together the complex relationship between Gelani and Lyman. The two men had been cellmates for months, and while Gelani had kept to himself, Lyman had established himself as a dominant presence within the prison. The dynamics between them were tense, and Jakes suspected that there was a deeper story behind their interactions. Jakes knew that solving this case would require more than just evidence and witness statements. It would require understanding the human element, the emotions, and the motivations that drove people to commit such a heinous act. The journey was just beginning, and Jakes was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how deep it was buried. The Maryland Correctional Institution was a place where power dynamics were constantly at play, and the influence of prison gangs cast a long shadow over the lives of the inmates. The East Side Kings, a notorious gang with a significant presence in the prison, were mentioned in several reports. Their influence permeated the cell blocks, and it was rumored that Terrell Lyman had connections to their black market trades.
Gelani High Totower, on the other hand, had tried to keep a low profile. He had submitted a request for reassignment just weeks before his death, citing personal issues, but it had been denied due to facility capacity limitations. It seemed that Gelani had been trying to distance himself from something, or someone, within the prison walls. Inmate testimonies began to paint a more complex picture of the relationship between Gelani and Lyman. Kaya Haskins, a fellow inmate known for providing information to authorities, offered a chilling insight. They were close, but not in a normal way, he recounted during an interview. His words hinted at a relationship that was more than just cellmates sharing a space. It was a bond forged in the shadows of prison life, a bond that had turned toxic. Darnell Tinsley, another inmate who had been housed near Gelani and Lyman, also provided crucial information. Heard them arguing a lot. Real personal stuff, he revealed. His account suggested that the tension between the two men had been building for some time, simmering just beneath the surface of their daily interactions. As Jakes pieced together these testimonies, he realized that what had begun to surface wasn't just a conflict, it was a secret life inside a cell. The walls of the prison, meant to contain and control, had instead become a breeding ground for hidden alliances, covert dealings, and personal vendettas. Gelani's request for reassignment took on a new significance. It was a desperate attempt to escape a situation that had become increasingly dangerous. The investigation revealed the case, which had initially appeared to be a brutal act of violence, was slowly revealing itself to be something far more complex and deeply personal. The hidden relationship between Gelani High Totower and Terrell Lyman was the key to understanding the motive behind the murder. Their relationship had begun in February 2020, a connection that had been carefully concealed from the prying eyes of the prison guards and other inmates. Coded notes exchanged in library books, secret glances, and whispered conversations in the shadows of the prison yard. Each detail painted a picture of a relationship that was both passionate and fraught with danger. Gelani, a man who had entered the prison with the hope of redemption, found himself entangled in a web of control and fear. The dynamics between the two men were toxic. Gelani grew increasingly afraid, his desperation evident in the emotional phone calls he made to his mother. "He just wanted to serve his time and come home," she had said, her voice trembling with grief. Gelani's fear was palpable, a constant weight on his shoulders as he navigated the treacherous waters of his relationship with Lyman. Lyman, on the other hand, was a man who thrived on control and dominance. His presence in the prison was one of authority and intimidation, a man who knew how to manipulate the system to his advantage. His relationship with Gelani was no different. He became increasingly possessive, using the threat of exposure to keep Gelani in line. "You belong to me now," he would say, his words a chilling reminder of the power he held over Gelani. The evidence began to stack up against Lyman. Blood was found on his shoes, a fingerprint on the latch of Gelani's cell door, and the cloth used in the strangulation bore his DNA. Jacob Williams, a known contraband dealer within the prison, admitted to giving Lyman the toothbrush shank used in the murder. Each piece of evidence was a nail in Lyman's coffin, a testament to the lengths he had gone to maintain his control over Gelani. As Jakes pieced together the psychological profile of the two men, he began to understand the depths of their relationship. Lyman was a man who thrived on coercion and manipulation, using fear and intimidation to keep Gelani in his grasp. Gelani, in turn, was a man desperate to break free, his hope for a better future overshadowed by the constant threat of exposure. The courtroom was a place of stark contrasts, a stage where the drama of human lives played out under the cold, unyielding gaze of the law. January 15, 2022, marked the beginning of a trial that would seek to bring closure to a tragedy that had shaken the very foundations of the Maryland Correctional Institution. The air was thick with tension as Prosecutor Latrice Germain stood before the jury, her voice steady and resolute as she painted a vivid narrative of abuse, coercion, and a murder that had left an indelible mark on the lives of all involved. Germain's opening statement was a powerful indictment of the defendant, Terrell Lyman. She meticulously laid out the evidence, detailing the toxic relationship between Lyman and his victim, Gelani High Totower. The narrative was one of manipulation and fear, a story of how one man had used his power to dominate and control another, ultimately leading to a brutal and senseless act of violence. The courtroom was silent as she spoke, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. The defense, led by attorney Zuri Haskins, attempted to paint a different picture. They claimed self-defense, arguing that Lyman had acted out of necessity, protecting himself from an unprovoked attack by Gelani. But the forensic evidence told a different story. The absence of defensive wounds on Lyman, the angle of Gelani's wounds, and the damning DNA evidence all pointed to a premeditated act of violence. Forensic pathologist Dr. Marcus Washington's expert testimony left little room for doubt, dismantling the defense's claims with cold, clinical precision. Witness testimonies added layers of emotion and humanity to the proceedings. Tamaria Fulton, Gelani's mother, took the stand, her voice trembling as she read letters from her son, detailing his fear and the systematic abuse he had endured. Her words painted a picture of a young man who had entered the prison with hope but had been broken by the very system meant to protect him. Kaya Haskins, an inmate who had shared a cell block with both men, testified to overhearing Lyman's threats against Gelani, his voice filled with a mix of fear and regret. Each testimony was a piece of the puzzle, bringing the jury closer to understanding the full extent of the crime. The courtroom sketches captured the intensity of the moment, the faces of the jurors etched with a mix of sorrow and determination. After 7 days of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the forepersons stood to read the decision. Guilty of first-degree murder. The words hung in the air, a final and irrevocable judgment. Judge Raymond Thornton sentenced Terrell Lyman to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, his voice firm and unyielding as he cited the premeditated nature of the crime and Lyman's lack of remorse. As Lyman was led away, his fate sealed, the courtroom remained in a somber silence. The trial had brought a measure of closure, but the emotional consequences of the crime would linger for years to come. Gelani's family, though relieved by the verdict, would carry the weight of their loss forever. The journey to justice had been long and arduous, but in the end, the truth had prevailed. The courtroom, a place of both sorrow and triumph, had witnessed another chapter in the complex and often tragic story of human lives. In the quiet aftermath of the trial, as the echoes of the courtroom faded and the dust of legal proceedings settled, there remained a profound sense of reflection. Tamaria Fulton, Gelani's mother, her voice tinged with a mix of sorrow and resolve, offered final words that cut deep. He just wanted to come home. He didn't deserve this. Her statement was more than a lament. It was a poignant reminder of the humanity that had been lost amidst the brutality and the legal battles. As the narrator, I find myself contemplating the layers of this story, each one more intricate and heart-wrenching than the last. Behind locked doors, hidden from the world, one man's desire to break free from control ended in blood. It was a tale of desperation, of a man trapped in a web of manipulation and fear, seeking a way out but finding only tragedy. Was it love, fear, or both? And how many other stories go untold behind prison walls, stories of lives lived in the shadows, of hopes and fears that never see the light of day? The questions linger, casting a long shadow over the pursuit of justice. In the end, justice was served, but the trauma remains, a silent testament to the complexities of human nature and the systems we create. Gelani's story is a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities that exist within the walls of institutions meant to protect and rehabilitate. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths and to consider the broader implications of our actions and inactions. As we reflect on this gripping true crime story, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Should the prison have done more to protect Gelani? Could this tragedy have been prevented? These are questions that demand our attention and our consideration. We encourage you to subscribe and like for more stories that delve into the depths of human experience. Stories that remind us of the importance of empathy, understanding, and the relentless pursuit of justice.